Hello there, everybody. I'm Ross Pitt, Shark Hunter, and this over here is Wizzy Puff.
It is Wizzy Puff this time. He's not lying.
Exactly. When have I ever lied, Wizzy?
I could start listing.
Please do.
And I'm already out of breath.
Oh. Well, that's Wizzy for you. Wizzy, you know I love you.
No, I don't.
Exactly. And you're gonna need to do a lot more for me to earn that love. So today, we're reading The Green by Jar of Hearts. It is a fan fiction that has a nice picture, so I was like, sure, let's read that.
It does have a nice picture.
It's very
Oh,
nice.
That's going right up there with my list of stories with good pictures.
It's going right on the fridge. What other stories have good pictures, Wizzy?
Well, there's Great Big Sky.
That's a good one.
There's what was it? Simpler Times.
That's a pretty good one.
There's Sunlight Sliders.
Oh yeah, I like that one too.
There's Moments Worth.
That was a great one.
There's
it's a great picture.
What was the clock? The Only Day. The Only Day. That was another one.
Damn, that was good clock.
There's Celestia. What's the one where Celestia is like going out doing stuff?
Depends on which one we're talking about.
Okay, there's like a picture. The picture is like Celestia with some yellow stuff, like a Bill Cipher type eye and a top hat. I just remember the picture for that I really liked.
If I'm being honest, I'm kind of drawing a blank on that one.
All right, that's it. I'm going into my pictures folder and finding out which story that was.
I like A Heartswarming Carol.
Oh, that one has a
That
really
one
good
had-
picture.
Really good one. As Celestia is my witness, are you talking about?
Yes, that was it.
Indeed, it has a nice picture, but I'm not sure I would consider it Bill Cipher type.
I don't know. It gave me
Whatever.
Bill Cipher vibes because of the top hat and the yellow eye thing.
It's a monocle.
Yeah, but it's like a weird monocle that gives her like a Bill Cipher eye.
Bill Cipher has like a slit eye, doesn't he?
I don't know. I remembered it being a slit eye.
It's not a slit eye.
Anyway, Public Boundaries. That's a really good one. No matter
Public
what you tell me.
Boundaries, pretty good.
The writing on the wall had a really good picture. Anyway,
Yeah,
we should
I
really
like that one. So, and that was our top 10 best pictures for the images things on film
God,
fiction
that
we
went
read.
way too long.
So yeah, this is The Green by Jar of Hearts.
Now, I see that in the characters list, it has a character that I don't recognize. Now, I don't watch the show, so you're going to have to explain to me who this is. Applejack?
Applejack is not a character. It's a cereal.
Oh! They have the cinnamon guy, don't they?
Yeah.
That awesome. I always like that guy.
Yeah. All right. The Green by Jar of Hearts. Chapter Among the Ancients.
It's not fair. It's just not fair.
Applebloom just couldn't stand it. Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon, arguably the two biggest jerks she had ever known, had gotten their cutie marks before she did. The pair had, of course, rubbed this fact in her face every opportunity they had. Only Twist, herself, and a few others were still without that special cutie mark. Or that special mark. Twist is a character that appeared in the the first episode cutie marks were really like mentioned a whole lot. Called I forget what it's called. Crusade Start thing.
Cutie Mark Crusaders?
No, that's not what it was called.
Aww.
Anyways, it was the start of the Cutie Mark Crusaders, though. But like, Twist was in that as Apple Bloom's only friend, and then she got her cutie mark, and then Apple Bloom abandoned her basically for the other two that didn't have their cutie marks. But yeah, Twist sucked. She sucked.
Was she like Diamond Tiara?
No. She was nice. But I don't like Twist. She madly paced back and forth as her sister collected their family's namesake apples. To her eternal irritation, her perfectly legitimate complaints fell on deaf ears and earned only a mild tisk from her older sister. Don't get your mane in a tangle. You'll get your cutie mark. Every pony gets one eventually. The youngest Apple couldn't believe her ears. Didn't AJ know important this was?
Talking like Yoda.
I don't want one eventually. I want one right now. I can't go to Diamond Tiara's quinceañera without one. I just can't.
The idea of showing up at a quinceañera without a cutie mark was pure madness. Course you can. Apple Bloom kept silent as Applejack continued, doubt clear on her face. You know, I was the last pony in my class to get my cutie mark, and I couldn't be prouder of it. I knew my future was to run Sweet Apple Acres, and these bright, shiny apples sealed the deal. Okay, so this is, I should mention, this is just in a scene from the show. From that very episode, actually, that we were talking about earlier. As she rubbed the trio of apple marks on her flank, Applejack's small gasp of realization. Come to think of it, Granny Smith was the last one in her class, too. Huh. Same with...
Applejack!
The conversation was abruptly cut short as an ear-splitting shout rang across the orchard. Shaded with the unmistakable tenor of old age that belonged to the eldest apple pony on the farm. AJ gave a small sigh. I'm gonna go see what all the fuss is about. Oh, and before I forget, could you get the shovel out of the far shed? Big Mac broke the one he was using to dig that old stump in the south orchard. Apple Bloom sighed before bobbing her head in affirmation. As she walked, she continued to stew in her discontentment. Why didn't she have her cutie mark yet? She was special, wasn't she? But what if she wasn't special? What if she wouldn't ever be good at anything and have a blank flank for the rest of her life?
Is there any pony that doesn't have a cutie mark? Besides,
no.
like, the babies?
From what I can recall, yeah, no, everyone has a cutie mark.
So every single pony has one. They all get it eventually.
All of them.
Wow. Even
So
me.
really, if Apple Bloom didn't get her cutie mark, she would be the most special out of all of them.
Ooh. Even Invisipony got hers.
Yep. But what if she wasn't special? What if she wouldn't be good at anything? What if she wouldn't ever be good at anything and have a blank flank for the rest of her life? Then she'd have to leave Ponyville so she didn't embarrass the whole apple family tree. She'd have to go somewhere else, someplace where no pony knew her, and she could pass herself off as a younger filly. But how long would that work? Eventually, someone would notice that a full-grown mare was sitting in on some elementary school class. Yeah, that would be weird.
Oh, God.
And even if she somehow managed to fool every pony that long, what about when she got old like Granny Smith? No pony would believe that a filly could have a graying mane and crow's feet. She'd have to live like a hermit, away from every pony, becoming one with nature or something. Whatever it is hermits do. Maybe swap shells? Wait, no, that was hermit crabs.
Wait, does Zecora have a cutie mark?
Technically?
Go Zecora.
Yeah, she has a cutie mark. It's a swirly thing.
Ah.
It's like a swirly sun, I guess. I could describe it as. Lost in her thought, the filly failed to realize she had passed the shed, and that the path was becoming increasingly overgrown with each step she took.
I mean, what kind of talent does a diamond tiara stand for anyway?
Apple Bloom muttered to herself.
Being rich and spoiled? They got their cutie mark, so why don't I have one? If I show up to the quinceañera without my cutie mark, my life is ruined. If only I had my cutie mark.
Yeah, if only. She paused, and suddenly her face lit up.
That's it!
She shouted. Her head snapping up and out of its previously pensive position.
You're just lucky you got a friggin' pop filter for those peas.
Those peas and those... What else sets the popping off? Teas and those... Cuz...
All I have to do is get my cutie mark before Diamond Tiara's party.
For that
Apple
easy,
Bloom
how haven't you done it
doesn't
yet?
fucking work like that. What were you saying?
I was saying, if it's that easy, why haven't you done it yet?
That's a good point. When was this made? The 26th of March, 2021. Well, that's interesting. So no excuses for this grammar. Grammarly exists. Use it. These mistakes are childish.
Well, maybe a child wrote it, Ross.
You know what? I didn't consider that, and if a child did write this, A-. It was at this point Apple Bloom became aware of three things. Item the first, she was no longer in the orchard. Item the second, if the trees were any indication, she had wandered into the Everfree Forest. Finally, item the third. Before we get to item the third, I should just say something about my previous statement. With the whole grammar thing, that the line that you had just read wasn't like grammatically incorrect or even spelled wrong. I was just remembering previous ones. Perhaps I should have waited for a grammatical error.
But there were no more.
Didn't. And if that's the case, good on them. Anyways, finally, item the third. She had been really loud just now, and the forest was really quiet. After a brief moment of silence, Apple Bloom began to slowly backpedal down the path. All she had to do was go back the way she came. Yeah, you would think that. Doesn't always work like that, though. She couldn't have wandered that far. All she had to do was turn around. Her family's farm would be right there, and... It was at this point the brush in front of her began to rustle.
Rustle,
She
rustle.
pulled...
I said rustle, rustle. I'm the bush.
it'd be... She pulled a U-turn to sprint to safety, but in her path was the last thing she wanted to see, a pair of glowing yellow eyes. Out of the gloom prowled a pack of timberwolves. The first one blocked her path back to the farm. The second and third climbed out of the brush behind her, growling at the terrified filly. She didn't think, she just ran, bolting away from the first wolf, in and between the second and third, screaming all the way. She plunged through the underbrush, not daring to look behind her. She didn't have to. She could hear the timber wolves baying as they pursued, and they were getting closer. She dodged between the roots of trees, through hollowed logs and tall grass. She ran and ran, harder than she had ever before in her life. Still, she could hear the snapping of twigs and pounding of paws drawing closer. She pulled a quick left turn behind another bush. As she desperately maneuvered, she saw the biggest one snap its jaws just an inch from her tail. Applebloom screamed again and put everything she had as she blindly charged through underbrush and shrubbery, branches and thorns opening cuts and scrapes on the little filly's sides. She didn't notice. The only thing she could focus on was getting away from those ever-encroaching paw steps behind her. The steady thumpa, thumpa, thumpa the timberwolves made, egging her on. Not edging, it doesn't have a D in it.
That would have been a lot different.
Yeah. Until they suddenly stopped. As she turned to identify the reason for the cessation of the paw steps, a loose rock sent her sprawling. Applebloom lay for a moment, crying. Oh! She was hurt and scared and sore. A few sniffles later, she worked up the gumption to stand again and turned to see if the timber wolves were going to eat her. To her astonishment, they were gone. Not a single malevolently glowing eyeball or oddly shaped stick to give a hint of their presence. All the more strange was there was a truly monumental briar patch that seemed to wall off the way she came. No, please don't throw me into that briar patch.
Ha! Applebloom is doing the old... I forget, what was that from?
Song of the South. But I was technically referencing the Disney ride, Splash Mountain. The only indication that she had actually gone through the patch at all was her ribbon, torn and tattered, trapped in the thorns. Unfortunately for Applebloom, it was too deep in the briar for her to get to. She shuffled on in search of a way home from the thorn bush. As she walked, she noticed the forest was behaving stranger than usual. That's strange. It was unnaturally silent. She couldn't hear so much as two blades of grass rubbing together. The lone filly's hoofsteps sounded deafening in her own ears, as any thought of calling for help was quickly banished. She had no desire to run into any of the other denizens of the forest. What was more, the quiet seemed much too total to be natural. It was as if some sort of mandate that even the Everfree Forest obeyed had fallen when she wasn't looking. The silence pressed in on Applebloom as she walked, and she started to feel like she was breaking some sort of long-forgotten rule just from making noise whilst breathing. Though the silence persisted, as she walked along some game trail that seemed to appear underneath her hooves, there was something else that accompanied it that she couldn't place. Then she realized it. The trees were growing bigger. As she walked the winding serpentine trail of the woods, the trees seemed to grow larger and larger by orders of magnitude. Some were bigger around than the schoolhouse, others than the town hall, and some were titans towering unfathomable heights, making Apple Bloom feel like she was an ant crawling on the ground. It was big. She even looked between her hooves to make sure the grass was the same, and she hadn't shrunken from some strange Everfree magic. But no.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
We've read a story with Apple Bloom roaming the Everfree Forest before, haven't we?
No.
Okay, then who was it before?
Sweetie Belle.
Ah. Same character. Ooh, hot take.
No, Sweetie Belle is like infinitely cooler.
Ooh, that's an even hotter take.
No, it's not. But no, the grass was the same as it always was. She shuddered as she stared at the massive vegetation that now surrounded her. Mountainous and majestic, ancient and enduring. If these silent sentinels made note of her passing, they made no indication of such.
How old are these things? Big Mac said that you could tell how old a tree is by looking at the rings on its stump. I don't think all the woods ponies in Equestria could cut one of these down.
Nonsense. Well, at least one.
Maybe one.
Then she saw it. After what felt like hours of walking, the path led to a parting of the titanic forest and to a clearing. As she stepped out and into the sunlight, she felt like her breath had been stolen away. A massive pool spreading out before her, dotted with moss-covered rocks and ancient timbers jutting out covered in wild growth. The water was crystal clear, almost imperceptible to the eye, with a lonely island with solitary willow tree bent and gnarled over the water, never touching, never moving, as though it had been painted into being rather than grown. Apple Bloom was suddenly aware of how very thirsty running for your life made a pony, and slowly walked to the water's edge. She cast a wary glance around as she bent her neck to drink, the ever-present silence still pressing in on the filly, giving her a strange sense of claustrophobia in the wild expanse she found herself in. As her lips touched the pond, she sent ripples across its entirety, only now emphasizing its unnatural stillness. She froze as she had a momentary panic attack. She was certain there was magic in this place. She didn't know a lot about magic to begin with, but this was far more foreign to her than the usual unicorn magecraft. Even the Zapapple trees and their strange magic were more familiar to her than the sensation this place gave to her.
So the Zapapple trees have magic?
Yeah.
Ah.
So that's how the Zapapples are so... Wow.
Well, what does the magic do?
Make some really cool apples.
Really cool or really good? Like tasty?
Both, I guess.
I have no clue what the Zapapples are.
I've told you, Wizzy.
Well, you're like, they're these cool apples. And I'm like, I don't know what that means.
They're like cool rainbow apples, dude.
Oh, they're rainbow.
Yeah, I've shown you, Wizzy.
I don't remember you showing me.
Like a few weeks ago, dude.
All right, I'll go back in our chat logs and see if that's true.
Good. Anyways, her trepidation was then immediately cast aside for just how ridiculously refreshing that water was. It was crisp and cool, and everything a cold glass of water aspired to be on a hot summer's day, and then some. She looked up and found herself drawn to the little island in the great pool. Next to the willow tree that sat upon it was a trio of berry bushes. And as her stomach pointed out with a low rumble, she was hungry. She slowly dipped her hoof into the water, more ripples. Oddly enough, the water wasn't as cold as she thought it should be after drinking some, not so much as a moment ago. All of a sudden, a gust of wind blew through the forest, sending branches creaking and branches rustling. You know the normal, ambient background noise one would expect in a forest. To Applebloom, however, it was as if a hurricane had snuck up behind her, given how there had been no sound but her own breathing until that point. She naturally flipped out. After a moment or so of undignified squealing and flailing, she eventually got her bearings again before casting her gaze about, as if to make sure no one else had seen her little spaz attack before lowering herself into the water to swim towards the little island and the food it promised. And then immediately misjudged the depth and plunged in head first. For a terrifying moment, she was submerged in the liquid. Then before her was a dark brown expanse. That was the lake bottom, dotted with green from the occasional stem of a lily pad or other underwater growth. It was quite beautiful, actually. So much so, Applebloom almost forgot she needed to breathe. Almost.
Ack, pith, pitu.
She sputtered intelligently.
Yeah, that was intelligently.
Yeah. Shaking the water from her eyes as she reared her head out of the water. She cast a look around again, before remembering there wasn't any pony around to witness her embarrassment. While not terribly comforting, it did mean her reputation was intact. She started paddling over to the island, the cool water soothing the cuts and bruises she had collected in her flight from the Timberwolves. The mud that made up the island's shore was warm and didn't cling to the hoof as she pulled herself up and onto the lonely little piece of land. As she looked around, she had to admit this whole place was very pretty, even if it was inside the Everfree, though this place seemed far removed from the stupidly dangerous forest that lay just outside her family's land. Her thoughts were interrupted by her stomach, reminding her that those berries weren't going to pick themselves, and shook herself dry. She looked at the trio of bushes and their pinkish-red berries. She recognized huckleberries when she saw them, and these were nice and ripe. She didn't bother to take the time to pick them and just ate off of the bush. As she was eating, she became aware that the wind had died down, and now the forest was silent once more, filling the air with a strange tension. However, at this point, the filly was having none of it.
Oh, come on.
She shouted up at the trees.
I know you're supposed to be some super secret magical lake or what have ya, but going all quiet like that is really cree.
That was a noise.
It was.
Beep.
The sound was not unlike someone stepping in a puddle, quiet and unintrusive, but in the silence, it was like a judge's gavel crashing down to find her guilty of breaking some unknown law that this place held sacred. In her peripheral vision, Applebloom could see ripples dancing along in the water, their origin point directly behind her. I didn't know this was a horror story.
Really? You didn't read the description?
No. As I said, I just looked at the pretty image. I'm kidding. It's not a horror story. It's not tagged as such.
I disagree. This is just like the other one with Sweetie Belle being chased through the forest.
Far from it. The Sweetie Belle one gave you directly very creepy overtones from the get-go. This one is just so far in terms of its creepiness. She slowly turned, and behind her was the strangest thing. It was tall and lithe, covered in old clothes that seemed to be interwoven with moss, reeds, and all manner of foliage. Over its face was a strange, eyeless mask, made from the bark of some old tree, with 3 interlocking and sweeping ovals, creating a T-shape carved in the middle. From behind the mask, a great number of branches pierced a green hood, forming a crown of greenery that fluttered in some unseen breeze. Cool. As she gazed upon it, she could swear she heard music pouring out from between the trees as it brought itself up from a crouch and onto its hind legs.
Oh, the music is a link.
Well, let's give it a listen.
It's Temple of Time, Unreal Engine 4.
Cool. Sounds great. Not gonna play it here.
That sounds pretty cool. It's the Temple of Time music.
Well, yeah. It's pretty cool. But we're not gonna play it here.
Well, I already played it for myself, so anyone listening
Good.
can go do it for themselves as well.
As long as you go down into the description and read this story. But if you don't want to, that's okay. Just give it a like. I keep forgetting to do that. Anyways. Making it appear even taller. Its oddly shaped feet stood upon the water, unsupported by anything as mundane as earth, stone, or any other solid. She knew immediately that this was its domain. She didn't know how she knew, but it felt right. It looked at her, tilting its head slightly as it took in her admittedly ragged appearance, before taking slow, calm steps towards the little filly. Despite the calmness instilled in its movements, Applebloom backed away from the advancing figure. As she began to panic, it stepped onto the land. And what happened caused the filly to freeze, not in fear, but in awe. See? Not in fear.
That doesn't mean that she's not scared.
Maybe she's scared, but if she was truly frightened, it would say in fear.
She's not frightened by the things she just saw. She's frightened by what's happening to her.
As anyone would be. My point is, this is not a horror story.
It feels kind of like a horror story.
Alright, we'll see.
I guess thriller would be a better descriptor.
Perhaps. So far, thrilling.
Thriller! Thriller, yeah!
Yeah. Anyways. Wherever its feet fell, plants exploded into life. Vines, reeds, flowers of all kinds crowded the creature's footsteps, each leaving behind a patch of newly sprouted greenery. So enraptured by what she saw, it took her a few moments to realize it was kneeling in front of her. Inspecting her from the way it bent down, taking in the cuts. The thorns had torn in her side, and the bruises the crash to the forest floor had raised.
Oh.
Applebloom uttered, uncomfortably. The attention given to her cuts was redirected to her face. She could feel it looking at her, and she was suddenly aware she had no idea what to say.
Hi, Mr. Mrs. Hi.
It tilted its head to the side slightly, barely moving and conveying little.
Do you have a name?
If it had one, it didn't care to say, the question getting another head tilt.
I'm Applebloom.
The filly valiantly plowed on.
I hope I ain't intruding or nothing, but I was kinda hungry and I kinda ate some of your berries.
She motioned to the depleted bush beside her.
Is that all right?
She asked apprehensively. The green thing nodded in reply, causing Applebloom to blink in surprise, a response at last.
So, I'm gonna guess this is your lake forest.
Nod.
Could you help me? I'm kinda lost, and I need to get back before
She gasped.
the party.
It's dumb. The green one rocked back a bit at the volume the filly before it began frantically pacing in circles.
Oh, I'm going to be in so much trouble. I'm totally late and I'm not supposed to go in the forest and
Why are you capitalizing?
What? Oh, them?
Yeah.
Because it's supposed to be like I'm. If you're gonna do that, then you have to go. If you're going to enunciate that it's instead of I'm, then you're gonna have to go the extra mile and capitalize it properly.
Ugh. I hate it.
Personally, I prefer that they just don't write it out like that because I do not like reading that.
Me too. I mean, I guess I appreciate the representation, but anyway. She looked down at her harried appearance.
filthy.
There was a moment's pause before the creature gave another nod. She glared up at the green thing.
Gee, thanks.
She spat out with some slightly caustic sarcasm.
Oh, I didn't realize I was supposed to be sarcastic.
Well, it was. Applebloom's a jerk. It shrugged and stood up back to its full height, walking over to the willow tree. Holding out a hand covered in greenery, it waited and soon leaves fell from the tree and collected in its palm. Applebloom watched in fascination as nature seemed to simply bend to its will. It then cast the willow leaves over her, and they spun around her, tickling her. She giggled in delight, and she wanted to say something, but before she could, she noticed one of the leaves whisked over a cut on her hoof and gawped in amazement as the blemish disappeared. She realized with a start that most of her aches and pains were gone, and the ones that remained were vanishing rapidly. After a long moment, she was fit as a fiddle, and looked over in amazement at the strange being that helped her. It was looking over her, or at least appeared to be from its posture.
Gee, thanks. That feels a lot better.
As she spoke, the creature sat down, crossing its legs, and gestured for her to approach. Seeing no reason to refuse at this point, she walked toward the friendly being as it produced a tortoise shell. Tortoise's shell comb, and motioned her to turn around. Realizing its intentions, she scooted around and sat in its lap. As soon as she touched it, all the tension from her day seemed to seep out of her. She let out a happy squeak as she relaxed into the strange thing's embrace, feeling the comb pass through her mane in a slow and steady rhythm.
This seems weird.
It does. Everything
Did you?
seemed...
was gonna say, did you pick a bad fic?
Look, dude. 521 upvotes and 3 downvotes. Doesn't lie.
Well, I'm just
Unless
saying.
you mean bad as in, like, bad. But
Sexual.
it's rated E, dude.
Okay. This just seems a little too sensual with, like, old baby Apple Bloom for my liking.
She's not a baby, she's just a kid.
Anyone younger than me is a baby.
Yeah, fair enough. And anyone younger than me is also a baby. So Wizard, you're a
Ross!
baby. All her worries seemed to be plucked away, one by one, with each pass of the comb. She felt so safe, like nothing in the world could intrude on the peace she felt at this moment. The warmth started to pull at her mind, as she felt a brush pass through her fur now. Her eyes grew heavy, as she idly wondered where the brush had come from. Apple Bloom eventually started to stir as she realized, languidly, that she had fallen asleep at some point. Her eyes slowly opened as she looked around. She was covered in a very literal blanket of moss and green. And the green one was tending to a bush she was fairly certain that hadn't been there before. Though it was hard to tell, since it was so dark. Wait, dark? She looked up and stared into the night sky that greeted her, the moon and glittering stars twinkling in the dark. It was at this moment she let out an inarticulate squawk of horror. Ah, you're right, it is a horror story.
Aha!
She stood and started to pace.
Oh no! Oh no! I'm dead! I am so dead!
She said to herself, her companion not even turning to give witness to the freak-out in progress. Its attention firmly on the slowly growing golden bush.
I didn't just miss the party. I'm out super late. Lost in the middle of a forest way past my bedtime. Applejack is going to be so mad.
I'm sure that this forest has its own time system, and when you get out, it'll be the same time that you got in.
Wrong. No! The filly lamented. Hanging her head, she heard a soft snapping noise. Like that.
Oh no, it was Ross snapping his fingers.
As her new friend finally turned to her. As she watched it placed laurels in her hair, they gleamed as if they were made of gold. Again, her worries fled at the green one's touch. She startled when she was suddenly picked up, but marveled as she looked out over the moon-dappled lake. The creature carried her as it walked over the still waters. Once they had once again reached the shore, she was placed gently down.
Well, that definitely beats swimming.
You got that right. The
Laugh
filly
track.
commented. The green one only nodded and gestured for her to follow as it moved through a nearby hedge that seemed to move out of the strange being's way of its own accord. She followed in its wake, but she found it was hard to keep up. Oh, with your tiny little legs. Poor Apple Bloom. So tiny. The pace and stride never changed, but she could swear the creature was speeding up. She tried to give chase, but the farther behind she got, the more the bushes pulled at her mane and tail.
Wait!
She called out.
You're going too fast!
If it hurt her, it didn't pay any heed, moving deeper into the green, and it was becoming harder to distinguish between her new acquaintance and the surrounding foliage.
Aw, that's just rude. You can't just be like, oh, you look like all the other plants.
Yeah. Then she heard something. Pull. The sound came from the direction she was going, so she poured on the steam and powered through the underbrush.
Hello?
She called out as she sailed through the flora around her. She recognized the voice now. It was Applejack. Had she come into the Everfree Forest to find her?
I'm here.
She shouted as the brush gave way and she stumbled out into the light. Apple Bloom. Her sister whirled as the filly darted out of the scrub brush. There you are. I've been looking all over for you. We're gonna be late for the quinceañera. If you don't hurry.
Wait, what are you?
She did a double take. She was standing in her family orchard, not a stone's throw away from her house. The sun was shining, and all seemed right with the world.
Oh, I was so right. I knew this would happen.
Except it wasn't immediately. It wasn't right when she left. It's clearly been a bit, Wizzy.
What are you talking about?
You said right at it would be the same time as when she left.
And it is.
No, it's not.
It's
like maybe, I don't know, about 30 minutes, it seems, if you ask me.
I was still right. I don't care. I'm taking this W.
I think I'm a bit more right, though, so I'm taking this W.
Well, you didn't make any claims like this. You just said it's not like that.
Exactly. And I win.
I win. I'm taking the biggest W. I'm such a big winner. I'm Ross! I want the W. Give me the W.
You don't get the W, all you get is that D. I'm gonna shut up now.
Oh my god!
Okay, anyways. She did a double take. She was standing on the family orchard, on her family orchard, not a stone's throw away from her house. The sun was shining, and all seemed right with the world. That couldn't have been right. She had been gone for hours, maybe even a whole day. It had been night when she left the lake. She was certain of it. Applejack gave her a once-over and was clearly surprised. Well, now, would you look at that? So you went and got yourself gussied up. Not sure how you managed to braid your mane all like that by your lonesome, but I say it looks wonderful, sis. Apple Bloom blinked and turned to look at her mane, the best she could. It had been woven into braids and tied off by her ribbon that she was sure she had lost it to the brambles. Her tail was the same way, and both had been inlaid with flowers and vines, making beautiful patterns and swirls of colors.
Ah,
The filly replied, intelligently, before she was yanked towards the house by her older sibling. Now we'll just get you in your dress, and we might barely get there on time. The youngest Apple was too bewildered to respond, so she just followed Applejack inside, at her sister's insistence, to wait while she got the dress. Apple Bloom sat in the middle of the living room as Granny Smith bobbed back and forth on her rocking chair. Granny only stopped when she spied the golden laurels.
Well now, how about that?
Ah, yes, Granny Smith, a well-known mafia boss.
She's a friggin' Joyzy granny who frequents casinos often and stuff like that.
All right. Apple Bloom turned to look as Granny lowered herself out of her chair and slowly trotted up to her.
I haven't seen laurels like that in a long, long time. Not since I was a filly.
Wait, you have?
The elder apple nodded.
Those laurels don't grow anywhere. They can only be given by a special thumb pony who can make them.
Granny leaned in conspiratorially.
You meet any pony recently? Some pony that maybe helped you out of a bind?
Applebloom nodded.
Tall, dark, and handsome.
Otherwise known as Wizzy.
I'm
Ladies.
paler than a sailor, okay?
Yeah, you are. Even I'm not as pale as you. I guess. I'm very pale, though.
Tall and green. Do you know them?
Granny smiled.
Only met 'em once, and I only know that they're old. An ancient thing from times long lost. We can talk more when you get back. You have a party to get to.
Applejack chose that moment to return with the young filly's dress. Soon they were off, and the eldest apple was left alone in the house. She meandered over to a row of old scrapbooks and pulled one of the oldest from the shelf. She paged through it until she got to a pressed laurel leaf, still a radiant gold.
Thanks, old friend, for looking out for my kin.
The end. I mean, there's also an author's note, but
Meowth.
you can go check that
That's
out yourself.
right.
All right. So that was The Green Thing. I mean, The Green by Jar of Hearts.
Oh, is that thing in the picture supposed to be the thing? I don't know.
I don't know.
Nah, that's probably just
No.
a tree.
Yeah, that looks like a tree. But who knows? That thing could blend into any of this stuff.
All trees look the same to me.
Wizzy. That is floralphobic.
I can't see the forest through the trees, Ross.
Ha. I don't get it. Anyways, so what did we think of it?
I thought it was good. I'd probably have it like ranked mid tier.
I thought it was lower mid tier, maybe, out of our ranking, but I thought it was okay, I guess.
I feel like I'd probably rank it somewhere around Vinyl Scratch Bakes cookies, yeah, probably somewhere around there.
Yeah.
A little bit under that.
I think my main issue is certainly with the grammar. So there were a lot of things that needed to be punctuated, and it kept messing me up, and jeez.
Well, if that's your main problem with it, then that's good news for Jar of Hearts, because that's easy to improve upon.
But gosh dang it, slap, improve, dang it. I'm sorry.
Improve, you imbecile!
That's rude. I need to knock this in your head because the potential.
You have potential! Good day, sir!
But anyways, the good stuff about this story, though. Very, very pretty.
Yeah.
Like, one of the better, like, I guess, quote-unquote, looking stories. I don't know.
Yeah,
like,
it's no, was that, Short Skirts and Explosions that made,
yeah,
okay.
I know what you're thinking of, and yeah.
Yeah, it's not that it's not ranked that high, but I would definitely say that, it looks nice.
Yeah. The descriptions, I think, are very well done. But not as good as Great Big Sky.
Yeah.
But still very freaking solid. And I think it served its purpose in that way. I didn't quite care much about the story aspect either. But still solid nonetheless. It didn't like offend me or anything.
I think it would have been better if she got her cutie mark in the end.
I don't.
I do.
What would she have gotten her cutie mark in? Not to mention,
Maybe that thing painted it on her.
Oh, yeah, that's how you get your cutie marks.
Well, you can paint a cutie mark on and fake it for Diamond Tiara. Be like, hey, Diamond Tiara, you're a big loser. And then she's going to be like, no, I'm ruined.
They try that in the show. It doesn't work.
I don't know if you could tell, but I was referencing Gravity Falls.
Well, I couldn't.
Yeah, I don't know if Diamond Tiara is like Pacifica Northwest, but I think she is.
She's like Pacifica Northwest without the good redemption arc.
Ah, yes. Doesn't she have some sort of redemption arc?
Yes, she does, and it's not terrible, but it's also like, come on, you could have done better with that.
Wait, doesn't she tell her mom off?
Yeah, she does.
That's a lot like Pacifica Northwest, except not as I guess it's not as helpful.
Yeah.
It's more just like self-redemption rather than redeeming yourself in the eyes of others.
Yeah. In the end, though, Diamond Tiara, great character. Silver Spoon, fucking hater.
Yeah, I think we all do.
But, yep. I guess, unless you have anything else to say about it.
I was just going to say, I think that wraps everything up now.
No kidding. This gives it a nice old wrapping of stuff. Thank you all for listening. Go down to the description and give this story a thumbs up because we know you didn't go down and read it yourself. We know you.
In place of a review, give it a thumbs up. How about that?
Yeah. You see, we can all do our part. Well, thanks for watching, or listening, or perhaps typing or reading this podcast somehow, I guess.
Through the auto captions on YouTube instead of just going to the story.
That's great.
That would be some dedication, if they're just like, they really want to read what we have to say about it.
Yeah, man. Good luck with that. And I salute anyone who does do that. But yeah, other than that, not much to say. I think my sister was outside my door the entire time playing Persona 5.
Really?
So this must have been interesting for her, because I know that these walls are not thick enough to keep out my voice. But yeah. Bye, guys.
Bye. Recorderino.
If there wasn't a voice more perfect, I'd strangle you. Wait. No. I didn't mean anything.
I don't know how to take that.
Neither do I. I think it was complete nonsense. But perhaps you can shift between the lines and figure it out.